desegregation.
Transitioning to the USSR.
Today is the day that ends in Y, so the alphabet people on TikTok are letting their Delulu flag fly.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
We're gonna react to some crazy TikToks from the LGBT community in today's bonus video from the perspective of a normal gay person who hasn't quite lost his mind just yet. Up first, trigger warning, Fuzz99 is here to tell us about her experience at the doctor that's left her just terribly, terribly offended. Take a listen.
So your name is Maul. Yeah, that's my preferred name. But I have also been going by a different name with my friends and trying to figure out if that's the one I want to go by or not, but I just don't know right now. Well, that's okay. Take your time, and when you figure it out, let me know, and I'll call you by that name or whatever name feels most comfy and like you. Cool. Thank you, doctor. Okay, so how do you identify? I identify as just me. I don't use the label, but if I did, I would say that trans masc is most closest to how I identify. So like a non-binary person who loves their masculinity. Yeah, I see. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I also want to work on some other things about myself first, but down the line, I don't know if I ever want to go NT or not, but I definitely want to get top surgery one day. But it's just, I'm just putting it on your radar. It's down the line, you know, when I feel ready. Okay, I'm gonna write up some quick notes, and then you'll be good to go. Lou. Mr. Thinks they're a man. Mr. Might be non-binary. Mwah. Perfect. Okay, you'll get a copy later at your portal. Am I supposed to see these right now? Why did you make me sound Delulu, but act and understand as if you got me? What is this?
So, Fuzz, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, but this whole thing comes off as a W for the doctor. I'm sorry. Why does my doctor think I'm Delulu? You literally don't even know what your name is. Your identity, non-binary, but love my masculinity, is incoherent and self-contradictory. You don't want to take testosterone to become more masculine, but do want to cut your healthy breasts off. I'm sorry, but the doctor viewing you as Delulu is putting it kindly. You're lucky they didn't put you in a psych hold. And I say all of this with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, obviously, because this person does upset me because she's spreading this to the masses, to tons of people on TikTok, tons of impressionable young people, but I genuinely do feel for her. She's clearly very unwell, very confused, and I want her to get help with that, but you got to, that's never going to happen until you take a little bit of self-reflection and accountability that, like, maybe if I'm going to the doctor and they're trying really hard to be polite and respectful, but then they come away with the takeaway that I'm insane, I might be the problem. Like, I might be a little crazy. Instead, she's just like, yes, my doctor's a bigot. Your doctor isn't a bigot, love. Your doctor is on to something. Oh, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but like lumping genuine mental illness, and I don't say that in a stigmatizing way. I support people with mental illnesses. I think we need to destigmatize it. I have experienced mental illness. I've had severe anxiety in the past. I've taken medication for it. I've had therapy. All of that I think should be destigmatized. But conflating mental illness with our identities as normal, everyday, gay and lesbian Americans, yeah, that's why this movement is running off the tracks. Like, that's why the train's coming off the tracks. That's why there's backsliding in support and the radicalism of like pushing it on kids and invading women's sports and that kind of thing, but also just the delulu of it all. It's so bad that even doctors are like, But sure, your doctor is just mean and evil and bad. Whatever TikTok tells you, babe. Whatever TikTok tells you. Now, we got even more crazy stuff from the Clock app to go over after this. People constantly ask me where they can get truly fair and unbiased news, but the truth is there's no such thing. The only way to sort fact from fiction and get to the real truth is to know what both sides are saying, which is why I've used Ground News for years. Ground News gathers related articles from around the world in one place, with context about the source's political leaning, reliability, and ownership, so you can compare coverage and quickly understand the bigger picture. For example, you guys remember the story we covered a couple weeks ago about the intelligence community employees in official government chats who were talking about sex changes, genital surgeries, and other very explicit material. Well, a story like that is so subject to bias and partisan spin that you can only really find out what's happening with Ground News. Right-leaning media highlighted the most inflammatory parts of the story, like the Post-Millennial, where their headline reads, CIA NSA officials use government chat to say they want intersex babies so children can choose gender later. Meanwhile, using Ground News, we can see that not very many left-of-center outlets covered this story, but the left-leaning LGBT media outlets that did cover it very much downplayed the scandal. Pink News writes, NSA staff accused of sex chats at work, but they were just discussing LGBTQ plus issues. This really puts media bias on full display, because describing those highly graphic chats as just discussing LGBTQ issues might be the understatement of the century. It is so hard to deal with information overload and the sensationalism of modern media and figure out what's really going on. But that's a key part of my job here on this show, and it's why I use Ground News all the time, and I'm happy to recommend it to you guys. You can get the same plan that I use, which is the Vantage subscription, if you sign up through the link on screen in the description, ground.news/Brad, or scan the QR code on screen to get unlimited access to every feature on the platform for just $5 a month. Sign up now, you'll be glad you did. Up next, this woke LGBT TikToker decided to offend as many Christians as possible. Take a listen.
When I say God, I mean literally and figuratively. Pull your hole out. What are you talking about? We all know Jesus is a bottom. God's a bottom. What are we doing? What do you mean you got nailed to a cross and you're all powerful? You like BDSM, huh? And what do you mean? Like, you lost a fight to 3 nails and you're all powerful? Ooh, ghetto, girl. Just say you're submissive and go. Like, pull your hole out. Stop beating around the bush. I think if I could go back in time, there's one thing I would always want to do, and it's get bigger nails for Jesus on that. I would go to Home Depot in the modern times just to make sure I get the thickest, largest, strongest nails I can find. Don't worry, baby. He not rising again. We'll never have to hear about him in the modern day. They're like, that tomb went closed and it stayed closed, baby. I was security guard.
Hey, so this is demonic. And look, I'm not Christian. I consider myself agnostic. And I actually think religions are not above criticism. I criticize them. I'll criticize witchcraft. I'll criticize Islam. And yes, I'll criticize Christianity, especially when people want to force it onto others through the government. That's when I have a real problem with it. But to go out of your way to be so intentionally disrespectful to Christian people's faith and their God in this grotesque sexualized manner is actually really, really just like nasty and also so counterproductive and self-destructive. You realize that not just Christians, but by and large, Christians are the holdouts, right? Like they're the portion of society that is not quite on board with supporting gay marriage, with supporting trans people, any of these things you say you care about. And so your plan is not to convince them, not to appeal to them, not to try to meet in the middle, but to mock their God in the most sexually graphic way imaginable. Y'all need to read some Dale Carnegie. This is not how you win friends, all right? This is utterly, utterly unhinged and self-destructive, and sadly not that unrepresentative of the broader discourse from the alphabet people on TikTok these days. It's sadly just not. But other than that, though, he seems really lovely. Really like a stand-up guy. Christians in the chat, let me know what you think of that video. Please, let me know in the comments. My goodness. Up next, this woke TikToker really thought he just dropped an absolute bar.
They want you so worried about men transitioning to women that you won't notice the USA transitioning to the USSR.
He really thought he cooked. He really thought he ate. But he actually played himself. So you admit socialism and communism are bad now? You admit that? Good. Welcome to the light. Glad you finally acknowledged that. Big W. And I'm sorry, but like I have plenty of criticisms of Trump and this administration and some of the things they're doing. But the idea they're turning us into a communist dictatorship doesn't even make sense, even from the Trump critic perspective. And again, like so many millions of people were killed under the USSR's brutal totalitarian regime where they literally sent people to gulags, that no matter how strongly you disagree with some of what Trump is doing, it is unhinged and just absurd and insensitive to make these kinds of comparisons, the same way the Nazi comparisons are gross and hyperbolic and insensitive and insulting to victims. But can't say I'm particularly surprised by that element of any of this from the TikTok people these days. I was genuinely surprised to see one of them using the USSR, the Soviet Union, as an example of what's bad. Like, wait, are they finally getting it? Or more likely, they just don't actually know what that is. Up next, this woman has thoughts on those of us who disagree with modern DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Take a listen to her profound bit of wisdom.
The same people who are complaining about DE&I being shoved down their throats are in fact the same people that complained about desegregation. Change my mind.
So that's not quite correct. I am not that old. And I have plenty of complaints about DEI because I think it's toxic and divisive and in many cases involves reverse discrimination. And I just want inequality of opportunity, no discrimination, but no preferences, no identity obsession either. And that makes me similar to the segregationists. I don't think so, love. And in fact, a lot of the biggest opponents, the most vocal critics of DEI are minorities themselves who don't want to be divvied up and celebrated or promoted just because of the box to check off on the census, or because in the case of like Asian Americans under affirmative action, they are punished for their success and subjected to literal racial discrimination systemically in higher education admissions, for example, in the name of equity and DEI. That's actually evil. And more similar, though I think it's different, I'm not saying it's the same, but if one of those two sides of that debate is more similar to segregation, it's not the ones who want the colorblind meritocracy, babe. And you may have hit the crack pipe one too many times today. Maybe lay off it for a little bit and come back when your thinking is cleared up. All right, y'all. I can't handle any more of these. I know I usually go longer, but I'm about to take off for vacation, and I think the Lulu limit is hit for today. I'll keep an eye out on the clock app while I'm traveling and save some up to do another video when we get back. But thank you so much for tuning in. Please do hit that like button before you go. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. And do comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear which one of these you guys thought was the craziest. And we'll talk again not too soon. I won't be posting next week. I'll be on my trip. But the week after that, I'll be back. And can't wait to catch up with you all then.